Welcome back. Two Shadows Never Sleep. Tonight, we dive into 4 truly unsettling Halloween horror stories, tales so chilling, they'll make you question what really awakens on October 31st. Turn off the lights, lock your doors, and brace yourself, because these are the 6 most disturbing true Halloween horrors ever recorded. And remember, what you're about to hear isn't for the faint of heart. It was the first chill of October, the kind that made the hair on the back of your neck stand on end. Small town streets were dusted with dry leaves, the air carrying the faint, sweet smell of rotting pumpkins. Olivia had always loved Halloween, the way the town seemed to come alive, the way people disappeared into their own little fantasies of horror for one night. But this year, something about it felt wrong. She walked down Maple Avenue, her small boots crunching against the leaves, the orange glow of carved pumpkins lining every porch. Families were out in force, children in costumes darting across the streets, squealing with laughter. The air smelled of sugar and smoke, a strange mixture of cinnamon, decay, and something she couldn't quite place. Her mother had warned her to stay close, to be careful around the old abandoned houses at the edge of town, but Olivia didn't listen. She had always loved exploring. The house at the far end of the street had always been a curiosity. It was massive, Victorian, with peeling paint and windows that reflected the moonlight like dark, hollow eyes. No one had lived there for decades. Every Halloween, someone would put a giant pumpkin on the porch larger than any she had ever seen. Olivia stopped in front of it this year, and her breath caught. The pumpkin was grotesque, almost alive. Its carved eyes seemed too symmetrical, too precise, and yet they glowed with a light that flickered like a heartbeat. The carved mouth twisted into a grin that didn't feel playful, but predatory. She stepped closer. "Beautiful, isn't it?" Olivia jumped. The voice was soft, feminine, coming from somewhere behind her. She turned and saw an old woman standing in the shadows. Her gray hair tucked into a messy bun, shawl wrapped tightly around her frail shoulders. It's huge," Olivia stammered. "Who put it there?" The woman smiled, but it didn't reach her eyes. "Oh, everyone in town knows that pumpkin. It chooses the best of the lot. Every year, it picks the one it wants to watch." Olivia frowned. "Watch?" The old woman's eyes darted toward the pumpkin. "It sees everything. Not just tonight, child. It sees." A sudden gust of wind sent the leaves spinning around her feet. Olivia felt a shiver run down her spine, and the street around her seemed to blur. The laughter of children fading into something else, something hollow. She took a step back, but the pumpkin's eyes glowed brighter, as if sensing her fear. I should go," she whispered. The old woman didn't move, didn't respond, just watched her. Olivia turned and ran, the sound of her own heartbeat drowning out the distant music from the town square. But when she looked back, she froze. The pumpkin on the porch was no longer alone. There were dozens of smaller pumpkins around it now, their eyes glowing with the same unnatural light. And then she realized the eyes were moving. They were tracking her. Panic seized her chest. She ran faster, weaving through the fog that had begun to curl along the edges of the street. Behind her, a low rumble started, faint at first, then growing, like 1,000 small voices whispering in unison. She glanced back, and her stomach dropped. The giant pumpkin had shifted, its grin widening impossibly, and the smaller pumpkins around it were rolling toward her, their glowing eyes fixed, relentless. Her lungs burned as she ran, her boots slipping on wet leaves. She darted into a side alley, hoping to lose whatever was following her. But the alley was empty to empty. No children, no street lights, just the fog curling around the brick walls. And then she heard it. Soft, deliberate footsteps behind her. Not hurried, not chaotic, but slow, heavy, and measured. She turned abruptly. Nothing, just fog. Her mind raced. It was probably her imagination. It had to be. But then she heard a soft, wet thump, and another. Something was bouncing. Something small. Something rolling toward her. Her stomach clenched as she realized what it was. A pumpkin. A small one, carved in the shape of a snarling face, rolling toward her as if it had a mind of its own. She screamed and ran, her hands reaching for the fire escape at the end of the alley. The pumpkin followed, bouncing with unnatural speed. She scrambled up the metal stairs, clinging to the railing as another pumpkin leaped after her, narrowly missing her ankle. Above her, the fog twisted and thickened, dark shapes forming, indistinct but full of menace. When she finally reached the roof, she collapsed against the ledge, gasping for air. The town looked peaceful from above, innocent even, but that was a lie. The pumpkin eyes were everywhere, glowing from the streets, from porches, from the shadows. They watched, they waited, and they wanted her. A whisper drifted up from the street below. "Come play." Olivia's head snapped toward the sound, but the fog swallowed it before she could see anyone. Her stomach churned. She scrambled across the roof, looking for a way down the other side, some escape. That's when she saw it, the giant pumpkin. Larger than any building in the block, glowing and pulsating like a living heart. It had grown, stretched impossibly, its grin wider, its eyes fixated on her. Around it, dozens of smaller pumpkins rolled like predators closing in, each one moving with a speed and intelligence that defied reason. She stumbled backward, slipping on the slick roof. The pumpkin eyes followed every movement. Her mind screamed for logic, for explanation. None came, only the terror that what had been carved and set as decoration was now alive, aware and hunting. Something landed behind her. She spun around, but there was nothing until she felt the weight of dozens of small pumpkins pressing against her legs, pinning her to the roof. She screamed, kicking and thrashing, but the more she fought, the more they seemed to multiply. The giant pumpkin's voice echoed in her head, low and gravelly. "You came to watch. Now, you will be watched forever." Her vision blurred, the world tilting as if gravity itself had given up. She tried to scream, but her voice was swallowed by the fog. She felt herself being dragged, pulled downward by unseen forces, the small pumpkins rolling and bouncing around her like a living sea of orange teeth. Then, a flash of light. The old woman's voice rang out, sharp and commanding, "Olivia." A lantern appeared in the fog, swinging and casting long, dancing shadows. The pumpkins recoiled slightly, hissing as if in pain. The old woman's eyes glowed with an unnatural intensity. "Focus. You must see it for what it is. You are not its prey." Olivia's terror clashed with the flicker of hope. She grabbed the lantern, feeling warmth and clarity spread through her limbs. She saw the pumpkins, now not playful, not innocent, but tethered to the spirit of the house, feeding on fear, thriving on the terror of anyone who dared look directly at them. "You must not run," the old woman instructed. "Stand, look them in the eyes. Fear gives them power. Defiance. That gives you power." Olivia's legs shook, but she obeyed. She forced herself to stand, forcing her gaze to meet the glowing eyes of the nearest pumpkin. A shiver ran through her as the pumpkin froze mid-motion, its grin twitching. The others stopped too. Their rolling halted, the fog around them thinning. She inhaled deeply. I am not afraid," she whispered, her voice trembling but firm. The giant pumpkin shuddered, and for a moment, the town seemed to hold its breath. Then, the glow in the pumpkin's eyes dimmed slightly, a crack appearing in its twisted grin. The smaller pumpkins hesitated, then retreated slowly, back toward the porch of the house. Olivia collapsed to her knees, shaking. The old woman helped her, placing a steadying hand on her shoulder. "It respects courage, child," she said softly. "Never forget in Halloween, things are never what they seem, and fear is the easiest thing to feed." The fog lifted completely, and the streets were quiet once more. Children laughed in the distance, unaware of the horror that had just brushed past them. The giant pumpkin sat still on the porch, silent now, eyes dim but watchful, waiting for next year. Olivia walked home, the lantern swinging in her hand. Every now and then, she glanced back at the house. The pumpkin's eyes seemed to flicker faintly, as if alive in the corner of her vision, and she knew, with a cold certainty, that Halloween was never just a night of fun. Somewhere in the shadows, the pumpkins were waiting, watching, judging. That night, she didn't sleep. Not really. Every creak of her house, every rustle of leaves outside, made her heart race, and when she finally drifted into uneasy dreams, she saw them again. Hundreds of glowing eyes, all staring, all grinning, and all whispering her name, all grinning, and all whispering her name. It began as an obsession more than a hobby. For nearly 15 years, Patricia collected Halloween relics, the kind of fragile treasures time had almost erased. Her basement gleamed with papier-match pumpkins from the Ijo Arling S. Tin noisemakers, German die-cuts, whose eyes still held that strange, joyous malice of an older world. One humid September morning, she wandered into a small-town estate sale. The house smelled of mildew and secrets. Down in the basement, half-lit by a single bulb, she found it, a silk harlequin costume, hand-stitched in deep crimson and black diamonds, and a porcelain mask with a hairline crack trailing from temple to jaw. Even at first glance, the face felt wrong. The grin was too wide, the eyes uneven, human enough to fool you, inhuman enough to linger in your mind. The seller barely looked at it. $40, she said. Patricia handed over cash before the air around her seemed to shift, as if the basement itself exhaled. At home, she dressed her mannequin in the costume. The fabric slid on easily, like it had been waiting for her. When her husband came down, he went pale. "It's giving me the creeps," he muttered. "Something's off." Patricia laughed it off, but when she was alone, she could have sworn the mask's eyes met hers. Over the next days, the temperature in her basement dropped. Her cat hissed at the doorway. The costume's arms seemed to move, ever so slightly, between visits, and Patricia began to dream dreams from the corner of her ceiling, staring down at herself asleep, unable to move, hearing a whisper in some cracked old language. When Halloween arrived, her friend's vintage-themed party seemed the perfect excuse to show it off. Her husband begged her not to wear it. She ignored him. The fabric was cold against her skin, but fit perfectly, impossibly. When she pressed the porcelain mask to her face, it warmed and seemed to mold itself to her features. For a moment she couldn't breathe, then the feeling passed. In the mirror, someone else stared back, a thin man with hollow eyes, a smile that didn't belong to her. At the party, people admired the craftsmanship, but kept their distance. Her laughter sounded strange, too high and too long. She found herself standing motionless in corners, watching others without knowing how she'd moved there. Then came the children, the host's kids peeking from the stairs. Patricia's head snapped toward them, a puppet's motion. She felt her body move on its own. When the host called her name 3 times, she couldn't answer. A guest made a joke about clowns. Patricia turned, too fast. Her gloved hands reached for his throat. 4 adults dragged her off, leaving violet handprints that were too long, too thin to be hers. And all the while, from behind the mask, she screamed, but her mouth didn't move. Her husband arrived to find her collapsed on the floor, twitching. The mask had fused to her skin. He pried it off, and she screamed with 2 voices. Later, the welts on her face formed faint raised symbols, names, and dates written in old German script. 1890s. Wickham family. Patricia learned that the costume once belonged to Thomas Wickham, a traveling clown who vanished after a boy died during his act. The costume had passed through generations, leaving tragedy each Halloween. They tried to burn it. It wouldn't catch. They buried it deep in the woods. 3 days later, it was hanging in their garage. Now, The costume rests inside a fireproof safe miles from her home. But on Halloween nights, Patricia dreams through its eyes, watching her husband, her children, wandering her house from room to room. Her scars shift every year, faint white lines that rearrange themselves like writing. And each October 31st, she hears a voice whisper from the dark, "Put it on." Sometimes, in her weakest moments, she wants to. Detective James had handled missing persons cases for over a decade. Halloween was always chaos, kids vanishing for a few minutes, panicked parents, teenagers sneaking off to parties. But the call that came in at 9:47 p.m. on October 31st wasn't like the others. The woman on the line wasn't hysterical. She sounded empty. "The house took her," she said. "The house on Blackwood Lane took my daughter." When James arrived, the air felt wrong, too still for a neighborhood filled with porch lights and laughter. The missing child was Emma Patterson, age 8. Her brother, Ryan, said she'd been trick-or-treating just a few steps ahead. She ran to the last house at the end of the cul-de-sac, and then gone. The house was a preserved Victorian, dark blue paint that looked black beneath the streetlights. The decorations were too much cobwebs, animatronics, fog machines, not festive, but ritualistic, like a shrine to Halloween itself. A man opened the door almost immediately, as if expecting company. Robert Marsh. Polite.com, disturbingly helpful. He invited them inside before James even asked. The place was spotless. Furniture decades old but clean, nothing out of place. Marsh offered tea, even smiled as James described the missing girl. And when asked if he'd seen her, Marsh replied softly, "Children come and go, but the good ones stay." The search turned up nothing. No footprints, no struggle, no sign Emma had ever been there. Marsh's alibi was airtight. Dozens of witnesses swore he'd stayed on his porch all evening handing out candy. Still, something in his calmness made James' stomach twist. Back at the station, the database flagged the address. 3 other missing children over 30 years, all vanished on Halloween, all within 200 yards of that same house. James read every file. Each child disappeared within seconds. Each was last seen smiling at someone near Marsh's property. Marsh had lived there since 1988. During every disappearance, when James confronted him, Marsh didn't deny it. He didn't admit it either. He just smiled that same hollow smile and said, "I've always been here on Halloween night, detective. Ask anyone." Neighbors confirmed it. He was always on the porch, always visible, never left his seat. The perfect alibi. James couldn't let it go. He studied maps, blueprints, and found one detail no one else had noticed. Marsh had renovated his basement in 1994. The year before, the first child vanished, without permits, without inspection. Weeks later, an old woman contacted James. She'd lived next door to Marsh for 40 years. Every Halloween, she saw faint lights through his basement windows. Sometimes she heard laughter or crying muffled, like from underground. And once, she swore she saw a child's shadow pass the glass. She reported it once. The officer told her she was senile. She never spoke up again, until now. James knew her testimony meant nothing in court, but it confirmed what he already felt. Robert Marsh wasn't acting alone. The house was part of it. The next Halloween, James took his 9-year-old nephew trick-or-treating, wired with a hidden camera. He watched from an unmarked car as the boy approached Marsh's porch. Marsh smiled, offered a candy bar, and said, "You've got a good heart, son. The house likes that." The boy walked back safely. Nothing happened. The footage showed nothing unusual, except for one detail. Behind Marsh, reflected in the glass door, a faint shadow of a small hand pressed against the inside wall. James. Superiors suspended him for unauthorized surveillance. He lost pay, reputation, nearly his job, and still, he couldn't stop thinking about that shadow. A year later, Marsh called him directly. 2 a.m. calm voice. "Come over, detective. Let's clear this up." James went, wearing a wire that mysteriously went dead as soon as he stepped onto the porch. Marsh sat there waiting, rocking gently in his chair. "You'll never prove anything," Marsh said. "They come willingly. They want to see what's inside. Once they cross the threshold, they're not mine anymore." James' hand went to his gun. Marsh chuckled. "Even your bullets wouldn't reach them. The house protects what it takes." Marsh died of a heart attack 2 years later. James, retired and haunted, bought the house himself, tore down walls, dug up the basement, searched every inch. Nothing. No remains. No traces. Just that wrong stillness. He demolished the house. The lot stands empty now, but every Halloween, James stands where the porch used to be, and sometimes, when the night is quiet enough, he hears laughter, muffled, childlike, coming from below the soil. On his wall at home, a map of every Halloween disappearance in the county. The red pins form a circle around that empty lot, expanding outward each year. James knows now that Robert Marsh was never the beginning. The house was just one mouth and something older. Something that feeds every October 31st. And every year, when another child goes missing, he feels it spreading like roots, like hunger. Feels it spreading like roots, like hunger. For 7 years, John had been the voice of insomnia. His late-night slot at WKRX wasn't glamorous, just him, a dim studio, and a handful of loyal listeners keeping the night alive. Truck drivers, night guards, people too haunted by their thoughts to sleep. He loved it that way. Unfiltered airwaves, no producers breathing down his neck. Every Halloween, John turned his show into a playful seance of sound horror movie themes, creepy local legends, and the occasional call from someone claiming to have seen a ghost. It was all in good fun, until that night. At 2:33 a.m., the phone rang. The voice on the other end sounded wrong, distorted, like it was underwater. And beneath the static, John could hear faint echoes, like children humming. "Can you play something for the children?" the voice asked. John chuckled. "What do they want to hear?" Listen to the space between stations. The line went dead. When he looked at his console, the VU meters were moving, pulsing, as if something was transmitting, even though no input was active. He scanned the FM band, sliding the tuner through frequencies that should have been silent. But between 104.2 and 104.4, there it was, a faint, impossible signal. Children singing, not a recording, live, at least a dozen voices, their pitch uneven, their harmony broken by dissonant intervals that made the song feel wrong. The words weren't English, not Latin, not anything he recognized. He recorded 30 seconds of it, just enough for a creepy Halloween segment. But before he could play it, another call came through. A woman's voice, shaking, terrified. "Don't play their broadcast," she begged. "They aren't children, they're echoes." My brother aired their song in 1987. The station burned down that night. The call dropped before she could explain more. John searched archives online, and there it was. A small station in Ohio, WLMT, burned to the ground on Halloween 1987. 7 dead, including the overnight. DJ witnesses said the building screamed through the speakers while it burned. John stared at his computer screen. Coincidence, he thought. Just another ghost story. And with a smirk, he queued up the file. "All right, folks, let's get spooky," he said into the mic. "Here's something straight from the twilight between stations." He pressed play. The song played for less than 30 seconds. Then every phone in the building started ringing. Not just the studio line, his personal cell, the fax line, even an old rotary phone in the back office that hadn't worked in years. He answered one, screaming another, children laughing, the disconnected phone, slow breathing, and behind it all, the broadcast continued, louder than before, even though John had stopped it. The sound now came from everywhere. The speakers, the air vents, the walls. Lights flickered. Equipment moved on its own. The old turntable spun despite being unplugged. Tape decks reversed and began playing backward. John yanked the master fader down. The signal kept playing. He cut the main breaker. Darkness. Then the backup generator started itself. The singing returned, furious now, as if it had found him. Text messages flooded his phone. Listeners said their radios had switched on automatically, all tuned to WKRX. One woman wrote, "My daughter woke up singing it. She doesn't know that language." Then came another message, from a number not in his contacts. "You opened the gate. Stop the broadcast, or they'll spread." It was signed, Richard Keller, retired FCC engineer. He mentioned an experiment in 1952 called Project Resonance, a test broadcast using dying children's voices to measure psychic energy. The official report said the project was shut down after all subjects died, but Keller wrote, "The transmission never ended. It only waits for a signal to carry it again." The studio filled with small footsteps. He could hear them running in the hallway, giggling outside the booth. The security feed showed shadows, child-sized silhouettes, moving through the building. John locked the studio door, heart hammering. The doorknob turned from the other side. On the monitors, faces appeared, children with hollow eyes and too wide smiles, their mouths stretching across the glass, singing silently. Their hands pressed against the screen, 7 fingers each dot. Then came the whisper. Dozens of voices, all saying his name. "John, John, John." He grabbed the emergency mic and shouted over the static. "This is WKRX. Authorized frequency. You are not real." The signal flickered, faltered, then screamed. Every speaker erupted in noise, a chorus of agony and fury. Smoke poured from the equipment. John doused the console with coffee. Sparks flew. The building went dark. Silence. The longest silence of his life. When power finally returned hours later, there was no trace of the recording. The audio file contained nothing but dead air. Listeners later claimed they'd heard nothing unusual. The FCC found no fault except destroyed equipment. The owner shut the station down for good. That was 3 years ago. Now, John works IT support, miles away from any broadcast tower, but every Halloween, at 2:47 a.m., his phone buzzes. His laptop hums, his car radio switches itself on, and from somewhere between stations, the song begins again. The children still sing faintly, sweetly, endlessly, waiting for someone else to play their song long enough for them to return. And John knows that next time, silence might not save him.